While Portugal and Spain did indeed share a union at certain points in history, and Spain did invade Portugal during the Napoleonic period, Portugal's territories were not fully conquered or annexed by the Spanish kingdom. Spain stands as the sole mainland neighbor of Portugal, being a considerably larger country. Centuries ago, Spain wielded immense global power, boasting expansive colonies in the New World and Asia, supported by its formidable military and naval prowess. Given its historical might and Portugal's position as a smaller neighbor nestled against the Atlantic coast, one might wonder why Spain never conquered Portugal. To unravel this, we must delve into history. The Iberian Peninsula, known as Hispania in Roman times, fell under the control of the Visigoths after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. However, their reign was short-lived, as a new force emerged from distant lands to conquer the peninsula. Emerging as a religious movement in the scorching deserts of Arabia, Islam swiftly gained momentum, propelled by early military victories against the Eastern Romans and Persians. Arab dynasties expanded rapidly, extending their reach to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean by the late 7th century. In these territories, Islam quickly took root and flourished, becoming one of the predominant religions within the caliphates. Hispania, believed to be one of the former Roman provinces where Latin culture was deeply entrenched, witnessed a pivotal moment on April 30th, 711, when the Muslim general Tariq ibn Ziyad made landfall at Gibraltar. By the campaign's conclusion, much of the peninsula fell under Islamic dominion. Islam took root in Hispania following the Umayyad conquest in the 8th century, as it did in other regions under caliphate rule. The Iberian Peninsula, known as Al-Andalus, became home to a diverse population of Muslims, including Arabs, Berbers, and locals, who embraced the religion even after the collapse of the Umayyad dynasty. In the subsequent centuries, various parts of the peninsula came under the rule of Muslim dynasties. However, the Muslim population was predominantly concentrated in Spanish territories, with fewer numbers in the Portuguese regions. Portugal emerged as a unified nation earlier than Spain, attaining kingdom status in 1128 following a decisive battle led by Afonso Henriques. Proclaiming himself King of Portugal in the first half of the 12th century, he played a pivotal role in the Reconquista. His kingship was officially recognized by King Alfonso VII of Leon in 1143 and by the Pope in 1179. It's widely believed that Spain began to take shape with the union of the crowns of Castile and Aragon in 1479, although it wasn't until 1516 that it materialized into an actual unified kingdom. However, an intriguing aspect emerged during the War of Castilian Succession. Portugal threw its support behind Johanna, the wife of King Alfonso V of Portugal, while Aragon backed Isabella, the wife of Ferdinand, who would later become King Ferdinand II of Aragon. Some historians view this as a pivotal moment, as Isabella was affirmed as Queen of Castile. Had Joanna emerged victorious, Portugal and Castile might have been united, leaving Aragon to maintain its independence. Until then, Hispania denoted solely the geographic area of the Iberian Peninsula. The name Spain appeared for the first time in history in the 1876 Constitution. During the Reconquista, Portugal, Castile, and Aragon allied to reclaim territory from the Muslim Moors, expanding southward. Portugal completed its reconquest by 1249, while Castile finalized its campaign in 1492. Following Christopher Columbus's inaugural voyage to the Caribbean in 1492, both nations embarked on colonial expansion in the New World. The 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas allocated Portugal's most significant colony, Brazil. In 1578, King Sebastian of Portugal perished in the Battle of Alcácer Quibir against the Moroccans and the Turks. With no direct successors, the throne passed to his great-uncle, Henry of Portugal, who ruled until his demise. Henry's lack of heirs sparked a substantial succession crisis, with Philip II of Spain and Anthony, Prior of Crato, emerging as the primary contenders for the Portuguese throne. After Spain's triumph in the War of Portuguese Succession, Philip of Spain ascended to the throne in 1581, heralding the onset of the Iberian Union between the two nations. However, this union precipitated a decline in the Portuguese Empire's influence. The Iberian Union endured for nearly 6 decades until 1640, when the Portuguese Restoration War against Spain ensued, resulting in Portugal reclaiming its status as an independent kingdom under the Braganza dynasty. Amidst the 18th century conflicts that frequently embroiled Europe's major powers, Spain and Portugal often found themselves in opposing camps to maintain continental power equilibrium. Portugal, leveraging its long-standing amicable ties, forged an alliance with Great Britain, while Spain, owing to its Bourbon family connections, aligned with France. In 1762, during the 7 Years' War, Spain mounted an unsuccessful invasion of Portugal. In 1777, tensions flared between the two states over land disputes in their South American colonies. The conflict escalated with the War of the Oranges in 1801 as Spanish forces, swayed by French influence, launched an invasion of Portugal. This precursor to the Peninsular Wars ultimately led to the signing of the Treaty of Badajoz. The loss of Portuguese territory, notably Olivença, paved the way for the full-scale invasion of the Iberian Peninsula by Spanish and French forces. In 1807, the Spanish king, along with his French allies, invaded Portugal, marking the beginning of a tumultuous period. However, the French, with ambitions beyond mere conquest, sought to extend their control over both nations. They deposed the Spanish king and compelled the Portuguese royal family to seek refuge in their colony of Brazil. Spain and Portugal found themselves as allies for the first time in centuries, united by a common cause and supported by the British Army. Together, they waged a relentless campaign against the French invaders, culminating in the conclusion of the Peninsular War by 1813. However, the conflict exacted a heavy toll on both nations, devastating their economies and tarnishing their reputations on the global stage. In the aftermath, they faced further challenges as they lost their American colonies, a blow that significantly weakened their once formidable global influence. Following the upheaval of having their monarchs toppled by the French, the once mighty Spanish and Portuguese colonies in the New World also succumbed to turmoil. Exploiting the internal strife of their former colonial masters, the colonies embarked on their own quests for independence, leading to the gradual loss of vast territories across the Americas. The collapse of Spanish and Portuguese colonial rule marked a significant chapter in the history of the New World, reshaping geopolitical dynamics and paving the way for the emergence of independent nations. After the collapse of Napoleon's empire, the specter of war loomed over both Portugal and Spain during the early 19th century, leading to tense moments between the neighboring nations. However, their rivalry wasn't solely rooted in their European territories. As early as the 14th century, Portugal and Spain had engaged in a naval race, driven by ambitions of exploration and conquest. Portugal's pioneering voyages along the Atlantic coast revealed Africa's significance as a major source of gold for the Arab world. Transported via camel caravans across the vast Sahara Desert. Despite their rivalry, both nations were driven by a shared thirst for exploration and expansion beyond their continental boundaries. During the Age of Discovery, the primary source of wealth for both Spain and Portugal lay beyond their borders. Their focus was on exploring and exploiting their newly discovered lands, as trade proved to be a lucrative source of income. The influx of exotic goods from Asia and the Americas flooded European markets, enriching both nations. Additionally, the influx of American gold significantly bolstered the Spanish economy. However, to maintain their lucrative trade routes, Spain had to defend its overseas possessions against rival powers and pirates seeking to disrupt their trade networks. In the 19th century, several proposals emerged for a potential union between Portugal and Spain. Advocates of Iberism in Portugal sought to establish 7 confederated republics, with 5 in Spain and 2 in Portugal, particularly in Lusitania. During the First and Second Spanish Republics, there were plans to invade Portugal or establish the concept of an Iberian Republic or Union. Even the First Spanish Republic drafted a federal constitution that included Portugal. During the Spanish Civil War, the Second Spanish Republic devised a plan to invade Portugal, but it ultimately failed. Portugal's terrain, dominated by hills, made it less enticing for conquest, despite numerous attempts. These are just a few pivotal moments where the histories of both countries could have taken drastically different paths. Given the historical backdrop of their formation and the events spanning centuries, several factors contributed to Portugal's resilience against Spanish conquest. The land held little strategic interest compared to colonial pursuits. Diplomatic relations between Spain and Portugal remained relatively stable. Decisions regarding the Iberian Union and the prior Union of Castile and Aragon played significant roles. Spain's internal conflicts and external pressures further diminished the feasibility of conquest.